Before we get started, I just want to send a message to the entire I Was Supposed to Have a Baby community that lives in Israel or anywhere in the Middle East. We are here for you. We are thinking of you. We are praying for your safety and for peace. And we know that your lives have been completely disrupted. You're running in and out of shelters. You're trying to prepare for Pesach at the same time. There's a lot that all of you are holding right now, in addition to trying to build your family. If there is anything that we can do to support you, please reach out. We are here for you, and we're sending you our love. All right, you guys, we're going to change things up for the next 2 episodes. I, Amy, am actually not the one who's doing the interviews. These next 2 episodes, today's episode and next week's drop, which is going to be the end of March, is going to be run by our amazing surrogacy consultant, Aliza Konig. We felt that these 2 conversations, which are surrogacy related, were better if she discussed them, because she has lived experience and also she's been helping hundreds of people. Honestly, I mean, the numbers are honestly staggering. She's been helping hundreds of people through the I Was Supposed to Have a Baby WhatsApp group and in different conversations that she has in communities, frankly, around the world. So I am thrilled, number one, to have a little bit of a break. But number 2, this conversation and next conversation are absolutely just, I don't know, I'm kind of at a loss for words because I'm so awed by them. This is a conversation Aliza will be having with a woman who was desperate to become a parent. This is a conversation with Andrea, who went through a horrific infertility and loss journey trying to become a parent. And then her cousin was her surrogate. Aliza has this beautiful conversation with the 2 of them talking about their experiences together. And so listen, learn. I'm just so grateful to Aliza for having these conversations and sharing these experiences with us and the entire I Was Supposed to Have a Baby community. Oh, and one more thing. Why are we focusing on surrogacy right now in March? Because March is Surrogacy Awareness Month. So I just wanted to tie all those pieces together in a nice little bow for all of you. Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Barron, the founder and executive director of the nonprofit I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. On this podcast, I invite different people to join me in conversations about infertility, pregnancy loss, infant loss, surrogacy, adoption, and so much more. We laugh, we cry, and we challenge the Jewish community to think differently about a topic that has been shrouded in secrecy and shame for so long. So join me as we talk away the taboo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Aliza Abrams Konig, and I am the surrogacy consultant here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. Welcome, Andrea and Elana. I am honored to be speaking with both of you today. Let me share some quick biographical information so we can get to know you both. Andrea Syrtash is a nationally recognized relationship expert and published author of popular books, including He's Just Not Your Type, and That's a Good Thing, and Cheat on Your Husband with Your Husband. She's written relationship and lifestyle advice for outlets like MSN, CNN, The Nest, Glamour, and Oprah.com, and is a frequent contributor on national television shows. And perhaps most relevant to this conversation, the founder of the website Pregnantish.com and a parent through surrogacy. Elana Syrtash-Ochs. Hold on. Okay. We're going to get through your name at some point. Okay. Elana Syrtash-Ochs, Andrea's first cousin, is the founder and owner of both Kol Chavirim Preschool and another program called KC Kids. The organization offers early care, aftercare, and mini camps providing quality programming for children from infants to kindergarten. A quick background about their relationship, and then we will dive into the interview to learn more about their unique experience with surrogacy. When Andrea was struggling to have a baby, her first cousin, Elana, stood up and said, "I will serve as a surrogate for you." Successfully Having successfully had two children of her own, spoiler alert, Elana successfully carried a baby for Andrea and her husband. So let's jump in, ladies. I'm really excited to be talking to you today. We're actually going to start with Elana because I do a lot of work with families and intended parents who are having children via surrogate. So I often get the IP side of the story. So I actually want to start with the surrogate side of the story. I myself had two children via surrogate, so I'm familiar with that perspective, but obviously everyone's story is different. So, Elana, why don't we start with you and ask you what first made you consider becoming a surrogate?
I never considered it at all until I heard the struggles that Andrea was going through. And I had, by chance, had lunch with Andrea and her husband, Michael, right before I believe one of their other surrogates ended up dropping out. So I knew they had been through a struggle to even get to that point. And I remember I was coming home from a trip on my 31st birthday, and I heard that she, lost that surrogate or that surrogate didn't work out. And I just remember thinking, like, enough is enough for her. Like, it's not fair. And thankfully, I do have easy pregnancies. I'd already had two children of my own, thank God, by then. And I also felt like the timing was right for me in my life. And I figured 1 year of my life to be inconvenienced if everything worked out, would give her a lifetime. And we do have a small family, and it was a no-brainer. I just texted her, like, "Can I do it? Like, it's enough?" So it's not something I ever considered before. So my cousin, we just met different milestones at different times in our life. And so I felt like, she got married before me, and I knew she was trying to have a baby earlier than me. And I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't fair, it wasn't right. And I really wanted to grow our family all together in general.
That's really beautiful. So, Andrea, why don't you then give us a little bit of background at what point in your struggle with infertility or pregnancy loss did you say, okay, we're going to try surrogacy now?
Yeah, and it's so beautiful always to hear Alana's side of the journey because it was such a beautiful shock when I got that text saying, "Have you thought of a family member?" But prior to that, I knew at 14 years old I had probable endometriosis and may have infertility. I never imagined the epic journey I'd go on after that. Though when I got married and I met my husband kind of young, and I was like, it'll take us a year or two to conceive because, like, I once heard I may have a problem. Didn't really think much of it. And years into it, I launched Pregnantish in year 5 of my struggle. And that's when I started learning. And I was going through miscarriage and loss and IVF like time and time again, so many treatments. And through Pregnantish and launching that, I started learning about all the modern paths to parenthood by covering them, as a platform. Um, and so when I launched Pregnantish in year 5 or even year 6, a reproductive doctor, and by this point I had gone through a lot, said, "Listen, I think the good news is you have healthy embryos. I have a feeling they look beautiful under the microscope. They look really good. Um, but I think it's your uterus. You have fibroids. I had by then had fibroid surgery, open stomach surgery. You have endometriosis. You have all these issues, probably that's preventing a healthy pregnancy from growing." So I learned that in year 5 or 6, which was, I always call it both um, a sad moment, but also a relief because it gave me an answer finally to what felt unexplained. And at that point, when it was, okay, now let's embrace gestational surrogacy, which for those who don't know means our genetic baby, but grown by another person, another uterus growing that baby. Um, I didn't know anything about surrogacy. So I was like, oh, great, that's our next step. That should be easy, and wow, we had quite a journey. And what Alana touched on was our second surrogate actually ghosted us and disappeared after 5 months of working with us and having a nice relationship. And Alana and my husband and I had gone out for lunch um, when we matched with her, and we were like talking about her, and I was sending her family gifts. And then when I lost that connection, it felt like another miscarriage. And Alana really did come to the rescue by saying, like, "I can't watch you go through any more loss. Let me help."
That's amazing. I'll just share on my own personal journey. We had a similar situation that we had already had one child via surrogate, and we were trying to have a second, and we had spent $25,000, had screened a surrogate. She was committed, and we were literally about. She'd been medically approved. We were about to sign contracts, and she just said, "I'm out." And then we lost another 2 years in trying to find another surrogate. And people think that surrogacy is like this silver bullet, but it's not. And it's not just a vending machine with babies that come
Yeah,
out, right?
exactly.
Okay. So let's focus a little bit on the fact that you are family members. So Andrea, what was there ever a hesitation? Wait, like, do I want to have a family member carry for me? Were you nervous about anything being a negative outcome of the relationship?
Well, something you touched on in the intro is I'm a relationships author, and so I knew well I knew Alana's very emotionally intelligent, which was helpful, right? So I knew we could be transparent and communicate our needs, wants, and expectations, which I think we both are good communicators, and I knew that going in. We've always you know, we had a nice relationship just by chance. We're both from Toronto. We live next door in New York and New Jersey, which is kind of funny too. Our fathers were brothers. And so, you know, it was a beautiful offer, and it was someone who I deeply trusted uh, to be a surrogate. But truly, it's you get to the point also, and you know this from what you went through, where you're just like someone is offering, like I'm desperate, and I hate to say I almost probably would have gone with almost anyone at that point because I was so like exhausted. But knowing it was Alana just was an instant. Oh, this is gonna work. I just knew in my heart.
That's great. So Alana, what was the conversation like with, let's say, if you feel comfortable maybe sharing with your husband when you decided to do this, and maybe with your dads or with the rest of your family or with your children? Like, give us a little bit of that
Well,
perspective.
first, once I texted her, I definitely didn't know 100% what I was committing to, except that I just knew we had to make it work. And then I just remember my husband looking at me and he was like, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" And I was like, we didn't even say the word surrogacy. He just saw me texting with Andrea and he had also known what happened. And he just I just still remember I was in bed texting her. He was walking by and he just stopped and he looked at me and he was like, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" And I was like, I think so. Like, yeah, and that was really it. The interesting thing is my dad was actually very concerned. He was nervous and he was scared for me, which surprised me, not because, obviously I knew he would care about me, but Andrea was his niece. And unfortunately both of our father's sides of the family, they died in the Holocaust. And there really is not many relatives on my dad's side at all. And it's very important to me as a close family that we grow if we can and that we, stay close. So my dad was supportive but nervous. But he also knew at that point, once I make up my mind to do something, I'm pretty focused and I just, hyperfixate on it and I try my best. So I think he understood that if I was willing to do this, he was just going to support me. And he did. Thank God he did.
Yeah. And did you help? Can I ask how old your children were when you did this process?
It was honestly, it, I just say like the stars aligned. Like it was really Bashert because my oldest wasn't even 5. My youngest was 2. And I still have a story. I still remember vividly that, we explained to my daughter very simply, I'm an early childhood director and owner, and I run children's programming. And my background is in early childhood. So it was important to me that I explained it to her in an age appropriate way. And I still remember just telling her, Mommy's belly is going to keep growing Andrea's baby. They took it from Andrea's tummy and they're moving it to my belly just to finish growing the baby. And then we'll give it back to Andrea when we're done because Andrea's belly isn't working well to grow the baby. And as a 5-year-old, you just kind of accept that as fact. And she said, okay, sure. And I still remember coming home from school one day being very upset that her teacher didn't believe her that her cousin was growing in my belly. And they tried to tell her it was really her sister. So that's when I realized, okay, it's more other people that I think I need to explain this to because my 2-year-old doesn't remember. He would kiss my belly and we would say, baby cousin is in there, but he honestly doesn't remember it. And Ella, my oldest, does remember that conversation with her teacher, but I was still mom. As long as their needs were being met and they were happy, it worked out, and I knew that going into this. I said to myself, my kids are young enough that as long as their needs are being met and they're happy, it won't have any negative impact on them. And again, 1 year, God willing, if everything went well, which thankfully really it did, um, of me going through whatever it's going to be that we have to go through, we'll give her a baby forever, like she has her daughter. So anyway, the ages did work out. Thank God.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So
There,
if it's okay, Andrea, can we ask you how you explained it to your daughter? I don't know how old she is.
yeah, sure. I do want to add one thing that's and then I'll definitely
Yeah.
answer that. But um something that anyone in the infertility community will appreciate is that when Elana did this generous offer and said, the timing would really work if
Yeah.
we did it in the spring, because like December, January is a good
I was
time
doing
frame for me,
registration in December
you
for my
know.
daycare.
Well,
It's like
and I
it's
just thought it
busy
was the
season for
funniest
me.
thing. And my husband and I were like, Elana, that one reason we're called Pregnantish, by the way, is there's so much ish and uncertainty on a journey of fertility for our audience at Pregnantish. So when Alana's like, let's schedule this, I just thought it was the funniest thing. Well, don't you know, it fully lined up exactly like the stars aligned, Bashara,
Yeah.
like Alana's saying. Actually, my egg was taken out to the day 2 years before that it was put in Alana as an embryo. And then my daughter was due January 2nd, came out at the end of December. She just recently turned 7. And how we told her story was from the minute we could tell her. I mean, when she didn't even understand as a baby, we always talked about how lucky we were that she'd grown Elena's belly because mommy's belly could make a baby, couldn't grow a baby. So similar language. My daughter, actually, it's a source of pride. Her origin story, she tells people, and she knows much more than the average person about how babies are made. I'm convinced.
Every time I saw Ariel, because we get together, and even when she was 3 months old, I just remember you'd be like, "You grew in her belly. You grew."
Yeah,
Every time we're there, like
yeah,
it was just like a
normalize it.
normal. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
It-
she and it's truly a source of pride. She's like, all these people wanted me. My cousin Alana helped. The doctor helped. Like everyone wanted me. It's actually turns into a source of pride. And I think when you're in the journey and you're nervous about how to tell your children about these steps, just know that they accept what's normal to you is what's normal to them. And
Yeah.
if you don't stigmatize it, it becomes a beautiful chapter.
That's great. It's cute. My son actually just turned 7 in February and talking about stars aligning. So what brought me to surrogacy is that I actually had kidney disease and I needed a kidney transplant. And our son was born exactly to the day of my first anniversary of my transplant, which was
Wow.
wild. And he was the second embryo transfer. Like we had tried earlier and the surrogate miscarried. And so like it was all like God being like, I'm really sorry for all that crap that I put you through, but here you go. Here's your present,
Right.
And I'll tell you what's funny is that when our daughter was born, his memory of like going and being there when she was born was like, Mom, can we go back to that place with that really fun Chuck E. Cheese? Like there was nothing traumatic about his sister just appearing in a hospital and him not knowing where this pregnancy was. And it's just like it kind of gets taken care of. Like this like pride. It's just like these positive memories for these children. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about let me see one second. Let's ask this. Was there anything that felt more emotionally challenging being that you were related? Was there ever a feeling of jealousy, Andrea? Of you like, that I wish I could feel the kicks or anything like that? Or
I, you know, I think that would be normal if there were, but I
Mhm.
didn't have it with Alana because Alana was so mindful of like, if I remember Alana when the tech would come in or do an ultrasound and I was there, like you'd correct them if they didn't know that I was
Yeah.
the mother. So I think that really helped because I didn't feel, yeah, of course, in general, I'm triggered by, I'll be honest, still sometimes by people who get pregnant easily and I'm this many years out and I'm still like, I never got that, or I never held on to a pregnancy. But no, it's just pure joy. And I think the way Alana handled it helped me not have that trigger. But it would be normal probably for people to have that.
For sure. It's interesting because oftentimes um, the question I get from people, and maybe people have asked this from you, is if someone has carried their own child and then had to turn to surrogacy to have a second or complete their family for whatever health-related reasons, they've asked me, like, do you think I'll connect with the baby the same way? Will I love the baby the same way? And I always say that baby's your baby no matter what. It doesn't feel different. It just is. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if you want to speak to that point of that feeling. When did it feel real? But when you're like, my baby is finally on the way.
Well, I was so nervous to say my baby's on the way until I held her. So, and that's just a reality. It's interesting, as we all know, in Jewish tradition, like you don't have baby showers before and all of that. And that actually worked really well for us. Although we didn't really call it a baby shower, but my girlfriends took me out one day for like brunch and I was truly pregnant-ish. Um, but when Ariel when I did the skin to skin in the hospital, yeah, it just, I was in shock and I just couldn't stop staring at her. Like, I remember being like, I have to go to sleep, but she's here. Like, I can't believe she's here. And she was waiting in a freezer for, well, cryopreserved for 2 years. So I didn't know who she was yet, but I loved her already in a way.
Sure. And Elana, can you maybe describe the feeling of delivering a baby and then giving it to its mom? Like, what emotion is going through your head when you just literally labored, but you carried that baby for so long?
I have to tell you, like, even just hearing Andrea speak about it makes me emotional, but like in all good ways. Like, it was such, and I hate to say this because I know that pregnancy and delivery is very difficult. But that day is forever etched in my mind. It was just handled so well by the doctors. We had Dr. Meyer, Dr. Ginsburg, and they included Andrea. They made sure that everyone knew she was the mom. And it was never me giving my baby to her. It was always in my head, her baby. I think I was very careful to compartmentalize the entire time. Um, yeah, I really tend to do that. I think that I just compartmentalized and I was very adamant also that I didn't want skin to skin, that it was her baby and she needed to hold the baby right away. But also it was a pretty, thank God, peaceful experience in general. Thank God nothing traumatic happened. And it was an easier delivery and everyone was there and it was like really weirdly calm. Like, so I think that all kind of helped me because and I'll be honest, and this is a joke that I have is um, my kids when they were both born, the first two, they were super pale and blonde. And thankfully, when I had Ariel, she she's definitely a Sephardic baby. So I was like, okay, this is not like clearly not my baby, like it just looked more like Andrea and Michael also. So I think that could have helped. I don't know if that's okay to say, but it was just funny. I was like, oh yeah, look at that curly black hair. And I just never for a moment. And also because it's Andrea, I knew it wasn't like I'd have a big loss, after this. Like the hospital handled it beautifully. Andrea really trained Englewood Hospital to
Yeah, I mean, I
handle
think
it.
that's
We were
an
the first
important
surrogate they'd
part. We
ever
were the
had.
first surrogacy birth. So
So
and Elena, I'm glad you brought that up because we did a lot of education with them, with my lawyer and with me, because they
And Andrea
were,
took care of everything. So I really was not, other than having the baby, like I wasn't concerned that I wouldn't be able to see Andrea after or the baby after. They gave us rooms right beside each other, but I was able to like relax on my own and she had the baby, but she'd bring the baby over to see me. And then eventually, of course, I did hold the baby. And it's not like I left the hospital and then I never spoke to them again. It didn't
right,
feel transactional at all. She's my family,
right.
it was just a very different experience. And Andrea and Michael were so communicative and kind the whole time. And they were very careful with making sure that they set the boundaries and respected my boundaries. And they were constantly asking about them. I mean, the fact that they were willing to not even be in the delivery room at the time initially, like, shocked me. I'm like, of course you're going to be there. Like, it, I think it really helped that we're family.
Mhm.
And I remember making a joke when they said, thank you, we love you, and I was going to say like anytime, and I was like, not again, but enjoy.
Well,
Hi, everyone. It's Amy. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say that if talking away the taboo means something to you, If you've listened to an episode and felt less alone, more seen, or more understood, please support us so we can continue doing this important work. Everything we offer, this podcast, our support groups, our resources, all of them are completely free. And that's intentional, actually, because we never want someone to have to choose between getting help and affording it. But truthfully, we can't do this without your help. So if you're in a position to give even just a little, it really helps keep us going. It helps someone else find the support that they need too. So please donate at iwassuppose2haveababy.org/donate. It's really easy and it really makes a difference. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of this community.
Well, Elana, I have a joke with Michael. If Elana asks us anything for the rest of our lives, how can we ever say no? But
Good to know,
no, but
Andrea. Good
yeah,
to know.
truly. But it is important to underscore what Elana just said about Englewood Hospital being incredible. But that was through a lot of education, because originally they were saying things to my lawyer and me like, we have to check with the mother if you can be there. We have to check with, and I'm like, this isn't an adoption. This isn't, I know, like, people who don't understand surrogacy, really don't, and surrogate mother is a horrible term, right? So they don't really understand what it is all the time. So once we educated them about it, they were phenomenal. Really
They
great.
really were.
That's great.
We had something with like the birth order, and you
Yeah.
showed it to them. Like you had everything.
Yeah.
So, you were already legally her parents as soon
Yeah.
as she was born. It was such
Yeah.
a relief for me that they took care of everything. And thank God Ariel was healthy.
That's amazing. It's totally a blessing. And it's interesting because that's actually one of the things that I talk about also is when people go to the hospital, they are often like the first surrogacy baby that maybe it's just that staff of the evening that they're meeting. Like even if you took care of your paperwork and the hospital knew that your surrogate was coming in, there's always one nurse who's like, "Hi, mom," and you're like, "No, I'm the mom,"
Yeah.
right? And it's so, and her name is on the board and her name is on that hospital bracelet, and it's really, it can be very painful. I literally almost took down a woman in the hospital who didn't want me to go up to labor and delivery. I was like, "No, you don't understand. This is my baby." And it's
Yeah.
it's all about the education, and it's so hard for people who have never like understood anything about it to conceptualize it. But it's amazing that you were able to do that and to educate people, and I'm glad it was a positive experience. Let me just ask you. Um, Let me actually ask you this briefly, Elana, and then I would actually love, Andrea, your perspective on it. What would you want people to understand about the surrogate experience that they often miss or misunderstand?
Such a good question. I do feel strange sometimes, speaking as if I represent surrogates in general, because I think we had a very unique experience. But I think that you have to do what's best for you and make sure that you're partnering with a couple or a mom or whoever, whatever family you're going to be carrying the baby for. You have to make sure you have a good, strong relationship with them and that there's a trust there so that you can trust the process and know that even if things don't go the way you expect, that you guys will have each other and that everything will be set up and sorted out and respectfully handled. And that's why I had no doubts about, being a surrogate for Andrea without even knowing all the steps ahead of time, because I trusted her and I love her. And I also like to say, nothing's a sure thing. So you could do your best and that's the most you can do. I completely acknowledge how lucky I am that everything worked out. There were so many steps along the way that, I know that things could have been different. And thankfully I was healthy, the baby was healthy. And honestly, we had really great team, not just with Andrea and Michael, but with people helping me. My husband was a great help. My family was a great help. I had a good support system in place. So I would say if you're thinking about being a surrogate, having a good support system and being in a good emotional space is important, and obviously healthy space. There was even this woman who I barely knew, and she was a nurse. And every single day I went to her for 12 weeks. She either at the hospital, I would wait in the lobby, or I'd go to her house and she would give me the progesterone shots in my back or my lower back. I had a big fear of needles and I just didn't want to mess this up. And like going to her and this person and I never really spoke to her after that, except telling her thank you. But like there are just certain people along the journey that really helped me. So I couldn't have done it alone. And I would just tell other surrogates to just do what they think is right for them.
That's great. Thank you. Andrea, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think Alana's superwoman in so many ways, including the fact that she was scared of needles. And we all know
Yeah.
through me going through nonstop IVF, there's a heck of a lot of needles involved. But there are so many misconceptions, which is a pun, of course, around surrogacy for both intended parents and surrogates. And people infantilize surrogates, like as if they're not free agents making decisions for themselves, their families, their bodies. I find it really bizarre that feminists or people who say they're trying to protect women infantilize the women who choose this. Um, but I'm constantly, especially through the Pregnantish channel, trying to bust myths on the intended parent side. By the time people get to surrogacy, now, there are other people who access surrogates, like gay men or whatever. There are other straight men, people access surrogates, right? But straight couples like ourselves, by the time you get to surrogacy, as you know, you've often been through hell and back, and it's the last thing you ever thought you'd do. And I remember taking a photo on the Brooklyn Bridge where I used to walk all the time home from the city. And it said bump ahead when they were doing construction. And I'm like, that's going to be my pregnancy announcement. So I never imagined I wouldn't have that moment. And so by the time you get surrogacy, whenever people act like you're being lazy, it's a choice for rich people who don't feel like carrying. I try to present a perspective of no, for many of us, it's not something we ever imagined, but it's something we're so grateful for.
Absolutely. So, can you maybe now shift and give advice to a potential intended parent and maybe something they should consider or think about when considering surrogacy?
Absolutely. I think you cannot over communicate when it comes to this agreement between intended parents, surrogates, and all involved, even their extended family, whoever you need to loop in. There's no such thing as too much information or communication at the beginning to set expectations and to hear each other. What makes you uncomfortable? What can I do? I remember, Elana, you asked me something like, you said something like, I drink fruit punch when I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Is that okay? I'm
I was
like,
like, I drink a lot of juice
as far
and I
as
get
I'm
epidurals.
concerned, you could like, I
I
don't
remember
care
you
what you
pausing.
eat.
I
I
remember you
don't care.
pausing on the other side of the line, and I'm like, oh no, maybe that bothers her. And you were
Oh
like,
my
you
God.
could do what you want with your
I
body.
was like, do whatever you want. But those kind of questions from both like the person carrying and you as an intended parent should be ironed out, because what you don't want to have later is someone micromanaging like the person carrying. Saying, what did you eat today? What did you like? That would be so intrusive and uncomfortable. So I think like I'm a firm believer in over communicating at the start, and then like establishing boundaries, like what is too much on the journey? Should we go to every appointment together? Should I call you after an appointment? Like you want to talk through what happens if, God forbid, like we lose this pregnancy? Would you do another transfer? You need to work out all of those
Yeah.
even worst case scenarios, because life happens and things, twists and turns do happen. And you want to know that you trust each other, to respect boundaries and respect each other. I think during the relationship, what I would suggest intended parents do is check in to ask what the person carrying needs, like in terms of, maybe sometimes, Elana, you're very selfless. Like maybe you weren't always looking out for yourself, or, I don't know. We want to make sure that as intended parents, we're supporting and asking, how can we help whenever possible? Because
I I just I do want to mention you reminded me that my HCG levels were super high after the transfer.
Oh my gosh.
And they called me
Yes.
first, obviously it's my body, and they told me, you need to go on bed rest for 2 weeks. Your ACG levels are showing multiples. So I said, like twins? And you're like, multiples. And I just remember panicking, but like pretending like I remember thinking, I'm gonna panic later. Let's handle this. Like, and I was like triplets? She's like, likely. So I went on bed rest and I was like, but we only transferred one. And I'm going through like, scenarios like, how do I tell Andrea? How do I tell my husband? Like, what's this gonna mean? I'm like, I did sign up for this, but like, I want to be healthy. I want to be careful. And I was hoping to have more children after that. And I was like, what's gonna happen? And I think Andrea recently found like the text messages between us, like they said it's triplets. And it's like, oh my God, let me call my husband. Like we were just texting and it ended
We
up
were
being
both
one.
freaked out, to be honest.
We were both
Like,
freaked out.
I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York. I'm like,
I was like,
this is not. And if you
what
knew
you
my daughter
bargained for.
Ariel, she's a very strong personality. So we're like, maybe that's why the levels were so strong.
Oh, you mean Ariel? Yeah.
Thankfully, only one.
I don't
baby.
know, but after 2 weeks,
Yeah.
we found out there was one. But there was a 2-week period there that was interesting right from the get-go.
Well, so I'm glad you were relieved afterwards. But Andrew, could I ask you, did you feel a little bit of disappointment when you didn't actually have multiples? Like, were you like,
No,
oh,
I
you were
think
okay?
she
I
did.
know that's funny because some people would dream of multiples. No,
No, we did one transfer for a reason also. It wasn't 2 embryos.
yeah, and I have other healthy embryos that I was like, if we're gonna have more children, we have other embryos, So I wasn't, but I was so relieved when it was one. And my husband, who's a jokester, every night would name them. Uh, and just stress me out. But yeah.
As if yeah. It's a good thing you didn't tell me that at the time, that they all had names, the non-existent
great.
triplets.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, we have, if it's okay, 1 more minute, I'm going to
Yes.
just ask you both this question.
Sure.
If you had to describe this journey in one word, what word would you choose? And briefly, why? And you can let me know who wants to go first.
Andrea should go first for this one.
Love, because it was an act of love for Elana to be my surrogate. It was because we had love together in our families, and it was because uh I don't think there's a greater act of love than the surrogate intended parent relationship when it works. Like I write about love for a living, so maybe that's why it also comes up. But I'd say love.
That's beautiful. Okay, Elana.
I'm going to say beshert. Can I use a Hebrew word?
Can you just explain what bashert means for our listeners?
Beshert is like serendipitous.
Uh-huh.
I think that everything worked out at the right time. I don't know that I would have been in a position to even think about being a surrogate or relate to her as much since I was already a mother, or that the timing would have been okay because I had already started, my companies. And at the beginning of that time, I wasn't maybe in the mindset or physically able. It was just the perfect timing and alignment in my relationships and with how old my children were and with what was going on in my work life. And then I also think it's beshert with how everything transpired once we decided to do it. I still remember Andrew kind of like talking me through meeting her fertility doctor, like this takes a few months. He's just going to do a check. And I still remember the doctor looking at me and being like, "You could start tomorrow," or something. Like the medication I think I needed to start taking to get ready for the transfer. And we all just were like, "What?" Like certain things really fell into place that are very unusual. Even I recognize that, even though thank God I had never been through, fertility like this. So I would say beshert.
Well, it's interesting. I want to add, and I totally agree, Alana. It used to be a trigger for me and so many in our audience at Pregnantish when we say what's meant to be will be. But truly, I can tell you
I know.
everything now makes sense to me. That was so murky, and why me and why this, and the way it unfolded, I totally makes sense. And I used to want to like punch people when they said that, but it's the truth. I also feel that very deeply.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you both. You can't necessarily see through the Zoom screen, but many times throughout this conversation, my eyes teared up because it's just so beautiful to
Too.
hear your relationship and the beautiful outcome of your daughter Ariel. For a lot of people, the surrogacy journey, first of all, obviously getting to that point is a very bumpy road, and sometimes people it's really not easy, and then they finally have their baby. And I say to people, because we had 2 journeys and there were a lot of hardships in our journeys, and I have said, like, it's so difficult, but that moment that your baby is handed to you is just the greatest gift, and you can't even imagine it. Then it just takes away all that pain to an extent. Like, some of us have to deal with that trauma afterwards, but to an extent.
Course.
So
Yeah.
I did want to add one quick thing that I realized I should have said earlier is that Andrea made this entire experience even better for me in terms of communicating this to my friends and my coworkers and our family, because we were featured in People magazine by an article that she wrote. And sorry, Andrea, you wrote it, or it was
Yeah.
that you wrote, and it really highlighted, I think, her path to reaching where she is now, and then our relationship with our fathers and our, it was very easy after she was able to kind of make the announcement for me so that I didn't have to wear like a badge, for 9 months saying surrogate. Because, the power of social media, people found out pretty quickly, and it was so beautifully and well written by Andrea that it really helped explain, I think, everything that was going on. So I forgot to mention that.
And our late fathers, it was a source of joy that they were featured in that article with their picture
them
and
as
their
children.
story. And so I think the whole family could rally around that with excitement at that point.
And and in the last few years they've both passed. And it's just like we're keeping the family growing and going, and we're trying to like be together and remember, everything about our background and our heritage. And I'm very grateful that I had this experience, honestly. Yeah.
it's really beautiful. And I remember, what year did that People magazine article come out?
It was just before Ariel was born, so it was probably 2018.
So our son was born in 2019, and we didn't share until he was born, really, other than our immediate family. And I remember my mom sending me the article. I remember that it was before my son was born.
Oh, wow. You
And
saw it.
yeah, and it brought me like so much comfort because I felt very alone when we were going through surrogacy. We knew
Well, I didn't know anybody ever that had done it. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian, like that, but who had a surrogate. But no, really, nobody in my community, nobody I knew. I mean, the amount of messages I got from people after that, from people that I hadn't spoken to in 20 years, or that I went to college with, or that I hadn't seen since childhood, just reaching out, either sharing their stories or asking me questions about it. It was really impactful to me. Like, it made me feel like this was even more meaningful, not just for our family, but hopefully for other people who don't hear about it, because I didn't know anyone that was going through this, especially not a frum or Orthodox Jewish woman. So it was very helpful that we had that article, because I think it helped people really understand without me, feeling self-conscious or needing to explain it or answer certain questions.
Totally, totally. And I really think, thank God, so much has changed. And many people now know about it, but this is why we do what we do in terms of sharing our stories. And what I run a support group that has 125 IPs in it that are all Jewish. And it's because every time I have a conversation with someone who the first time they're hearing about surrogacy is now, and I'm the only name they've heard of, and I'm like, no, this can't be anymore. We have to make sure everyone knows about this. I'll end with this, that there's a woman I had worked with, who was married for 18 years dealing with infertility until she finally was told about surrogacy and had a child right before her 25th wedding anniversary. Like,
Wow.
that's crazy and terrible and amazing all at the same time. And just thank you both so much for sharing so beautifully your story, and for doing each what you did for each other, and bringing more Jewish babies into this world is an amazing thing. So thank you, and you should just both have a lot of success in all you're doing, and a lot of nachas from your children. So thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments about this episode, or would like to suggest a future episode, please reach out at 917-382-0422, or send us an email at info@IWasSupposedToHaveAbaby.org or info@IWSTHAB.org. And please don't forget to like, rate, and review so we can continue spreading the support to the wider Jewish community.